Hey, what's going on, my friend? It's Jeff Newport from chasingstrength.com. And today we are going to answer the question, should you really do mobility work? Or said another way, is mobility work really necessary? That was the gist of a question I read the other day on a forum. It was the Strong First forum in particular, and I recommend you visit there if you don't, because it's a great place, and you'll find a lot of like-minded people who like to use kettlebells and are interested in overall general fitness. But how should we say this in a contrarian? That's the word I'm looking for. Fitness and strength performed in a contrarian manner. In other words, upstream or against the flow. Okay. So the OP stated that there really wasn't anything he couldn't do training wise, which I think is a great thing. He had full range of motion and never experienced any pain and just did it or mobility work because he was under the impression that he should, that it was a good idea. Right. Furthermore, the OP stated, and I'll toss this up here on the screen so you can read it. He says, I've unquestionably been doing mobility stuff about 10 minutes or so, but I'm starting to think that at best it makes no difference to anything. And at worst, it might actually be causing a few niggles here and there. And by niggles, I think he means like aches and pains, right? If you're not familiar with that word. I haven't had time to post my 2 cents yet, but I thought it might be helpful to start here in this video in case you're struggling with the same thoughts, right? In case you got stiff, achy parts and you've heard about this mobility thing. So let me lay some background here for the record. Okay. I got certified. I was a certified guy almost 2 decades ago in a performance mobility system that actually, it really helped me out at first. Okay. Okay. I'll explain more on that here in a second, but let me just say that, it was such a immediate life-changing experience. I had just hurt my hip the year before, and I spent about 8 months trying to get out of pain using some of the traditional approaches. It was such a life-changing experience that I dove in head first, man. I drank that Kool-Aid. Okay. If you know anything about Colts, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that this is a cold or anything, but you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Kool-Aid. Okay. It wasn't Jim Jones level, Jonestown Kool-Aid, but it was Kool-Aid nonetheless. Okay. In fact, it was, as I sit here and recall this, I'm embarrassed in a way to talk about this, but it's hilarious, right? I mean, it was like I was in some kind of multi-level marketing scam, right? I told everybody about it. Like everybody needed to know, and everybody who was doing anything, they were doing it wrong, and they just had to do this system, and this would fix everything, right? Like, I mean, it's just that's how bad it was. Okay. I mean, it was Kool-Aid, let me tell you. And what's worse is my wife, who has a doctorate in physical therapy, right? She was also using it and using it with her patients. And like I said, it worked great at first. Okay. It was the only thing I had tried up until that point and later routinely used that got rid of my chronic, excruciating knee pain for any length of time. Okay. So notice I said for any length of time and not permanently. That's a key point. Okay. But eventually what I noticed and what I found, and my wife found this too, is that I had to do more and 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 more mobility work. And I had to spend more and more and more and more and more and more and more money to learn the next level mobility stuff, right? I mean, to the tune between the two of us, I think I spent over 20 grand in this system between my wife and myself. Okay. So what was the results? What were the results? Well, eventually my entire body just felt disconnected. Okay. I felt like I could no longer control it, no matter how many drills or variations of those drills that I did. And by the way, there were 11,000 different variations to improve your shoulder mobility. Okay. I kid you not. There was another PhD who was involved in the program, or I should say a PhD, another person who was involved in the program, who had a PhD in computer science and went through and figured this out. She came up with 11,000 different variations to fix your shoulder mobility. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't have time to test out 11,000 different drills. Okay. It didn't matter. Okay. It didn't matter how many of those 11,000 drills that I had. I'm sure there were, or used. I'm sure there were many more for the knees, because no matter which program master trainer I saw, or whether I worked with the founder who was a chiropractor or not, my body just continued to get more and more disconnected. And you know what? That's when I spit out the Kool-Aid. Okay. I stopped drinking. Like I said, somewhat embarrassing to look back upon, but I'm glad that it happened. First and foremost, because it was the genesis, or at least a genesis moment, for a program that I co-developed with one of my friends called Original Strength, which we co-founded and co-developed back in 2010. And second, it showed me exactly what not to do later on when I designed my own system. Actually, my wife and I designed it. And third, it gave me a healthy respect for the power and the prominence of your central nervous system. Well, my central nervous system, the central nervous system, right? The brain and the spinal cord, in how the body functions, and as a result, how to even make this video for you. Okay, so enough of the background. Let's talk about mobility theory. Mobility theory basically goes like this. If you have a stiff part, right, body part, or restricted range of motion, you should move it. Okay, you should wiggle it or whatever. Okay, and moving it through its full range of motion will help you move it through its full range of motion in the future. I know. Like, don't ask. Okay, look, there are all kinds of mobility drills that have resulted from that. We have what are called AP glides, which is forward and backward, right? We have circles. Let me see if I can make this circle here so you can see it. That would be a circle. Okay, we've got figure eights, right? You could take your finger, okay, let's see, you can take your finger here. We could do a little figure eight here for the joint, okay? You got clovers, which is, let's see if I can do a clover here. We got clover. There you go. You see that? That was a clover. Okay, you get the picture. We have all these different joint mobility drills. But back to the original question at hand. If you're like the forum OP and you can do all that you want to do, right, and you have a full range of motion in all your parts, then do you actually need to do any of these fancy schmancy mobility drills? I don't think so. There's probably zero reason for you to waste your time doing any mobility work. So examples of exercises you can already do pain-free, of course, to tell whether or not you need some mobility work. Well, let's give you a list of those. Okay. So number one, you do pull-ups or chin-ups to the throat or the chest. Okay. You do handstands against a wall with your body perfectly flush or flat against it. You can do parallel dips or ring dips. Okay. You can do extended range of motion push-ups. So that'd be, you put your hands on a TRX, right? And you go below, let's see here. I don't know if you can see this. You go below here like this. Okay. You go below your chest. So you can do TRX or on boxes or something like that. Okay. Kind of belabored that point. You can do full butt to ankle bodyweight squats without falling over or any sort of pain. You can do single leg squats, AKA also known as the pistol squat, right? So that's a single leg squat with one leg out in front of you and your butt to your ankles. You can do the pike stretch, which is also the good old fashioned hamstring stretch with your legs out in front of you, feet together, and your nose touches your knees. Or you could do the old crisscross applesauce, as my kids call it, or the what I grew up knowing as the American Indian style or Native American style of sitting. Okay, so cross legs. And those are just a few of the tests that you can test yourself with. But what if you can't do those? Okay, what if you have some stiffness, some soreness, some tightness, or some pain with any of those movements, or any other movements for that matter that I didn't mention? Okay, then most likely you will need to do some kind of restoration work, but not necessarily mobility work. Okay, let me explain. There's a principle or saying in the physical therapy world that goes like this: proximal stability creates distal mobility. In other words, when the center of your body is stable, able to resist movement, it creates mobility, okay, by default, or movement in your appendages or your limbs. Okay, for example, let's just say you have stiff ankles, which is very common for people who have a hard time squatting, right? They get a little checkup and, oh, you know what? You need to do some ankle mobility work because you have stiff ankles. But that may be true that you have stiff ankles, okay? But unless you checked your core stability and knew for certain that it was intact, all the AP ankle glides and joint circling for your ankles will have minimal effect. You will get a short-term increase in mobility. And then once you've done your exercises, that window of opportunity, as I like to call it, will usually slam shut and you will have lost that ankle mobility again. All right. Why? Well, see, your body is very, very smart. If it can't stabilize your pelvis and lumbar spine, it restricts the movement of your limbs, because it feels like it can't control those ranges of motion. All right. So when you start wiggling them, right, doing all those fancy mobility drills, you're overriding your body's natural protective mechanisms. This can, and most likely will, lead to further injuries in the future. Okay. So the key, therefore, is to recapture that proximal stability. How do we do that? Very simple. We do that by restoring what's called motor control. Okay. I won't get into what motor control is in this video because, well, this video is getting kind of long. But how do you restore motor control? Well, I put together a program called the P3 protocol. All right, I'll leave a link in the description below for you, okay, in case you want to check it out. And you might be wondering, well, I've never heard you mention this before, Jeff, in any of your videos. I know, typically I keep that reserved for a small segment of my email list, but I thought I would answer the question here in case you needed that sort of help, okay? You might be wondering, well, okay, well, how well does the P3 protocol work, right? If you're saying not to do traditional stuff and do this new weird thing that I've never heard of before, how well does it work? Okay, well, I'm going to flash basically a message from the Strong First Forum. A user with the handle Training for Life, pop this in there. Okay, I'll read this for you. We'll flash it up here on the screen. It says, 1 month in, I've done the protocol almost daily. It's working better than any restoration work I've done before. I've even started to tone down my other training to focus more on the program as it's working so well. Can't really articulate what's happening, but it's definitely bringing my body together. Still on phase 1. It's interesting how previous levels of a position seem to work even better once I reach a new level. For example, sideline. I'm typically doing level 2, but go for level 1 every 3-4 sessions, and it feels like it works better and better every time. I will post a link in the description below for this thread, so you can go over there and check it out for yourself, okay? Furthermore, I will post a link in the description below to the P3 protocol, all right? So look, if you've tried other mobility programs or other restoration programs and they failed you, check out the P3 protocol. You might be surprised at how well it works for you, just like your work for Training for Life. By the way, this is what I use myself, okay? This is what allows me to hoist heavy kettlebells and even mess with a barbell without injuring myself, all right? Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please click the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and share it with your friends, right, if you found it really helpful. And, I'd love to know your experience and your background with mobility work, restoration work, flexibility training, and whether or not it's helped you in the past. All right. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I've enjoyed making it for you. Until the next one, stay strong.